Good evening. My name is John H., and I'm an alcoholic. In this Code Blue Big Book Action Seminar, we're going to go through the recovery section of the Big Book line by line. We are going to take the action that our founders and the first 100 people who recovered say that we must do to overcome this seemingly hopeless condition of mind and body. Now, I don't claim to be any kind of a big book and 12-step guru or expert, not by any means. I am no kind of deep spiritual advisor. I'm just a simple drunk who was almost dead from the disease when a couple of recovered alcoholics reached out their hand to me and said, "We have a different way." Now, this is based on the Canadian method pioneered by the Golden Slippers, but I also borrow heavily from the Joe and Charlie Big Book Weekend tapes, from Chuck C., from Clancy, and from all of the giants upon whose shoulders we are riding. Now, I would love it if you could grab a couple of friends and listen to these sessions together, because working the steps with other people is always more powerful than trying to go through them alone. So you're going to need a large print big book, a highlighter, and a pen, and some willingness. And as you guys will see, we open every session with a set-aside prayer to more open our mind to be more receptive to this information. Thank you so much for listening. Good evening, I'm John. I'm an alcoholic. Hi, John. During the 1950s, a man by the name of Max C., now dead, started a group in Winnipeg, Manitoba called the Golden Slippers. The group was a back to the basics of the big book kind of group, especially for those people who could not stay sober for any length of time. The group took a bunch of chronic slippers and walked them through the steps, taking the action exactly as laid out by the first 100 men and women who wrote the basic textbook Alcoholics Anonymous. This is not your typical thanks for sharing kind of AA meeting, nor is it like any seminar. Participants are asked to do all 12 steps as laid out in our basic textbook. One or more of the people who have done this work before will be guides to lead you through the instructions in our basic textbook using a dictionary published at about the same time as the book Alcoholics Anonymous to help us better understand the directions as they were written by the first 100 men and women. We ask every participant to commit to the entire process. Though we read and study the AA Big Book, this group is not limited to members of AA. We who have participated in these groups before have come to understand that these sessions make us much better sponsors. We can now lead people through the steps exactly as given to us by those who have gone before, unfettered and unchanged. In addition to being a boot camp for sponsors, we also feel this is especially valuable to those who have been through some sort of treatment or rehab and have been in effect left off at 3 or 5. Recovery requires that we do all 12 steps. We recover in AA by taking the steps, and if we don't take the action as described in our basic textbook, we might not recover. These study and action sessions will guide you through the steps precisely as the first 100 men and women laid them down. These are back to the basic sessions, accepting the simple kit of spiritual tools that's been laid at our feet. Let's open with the set-aside prayer. God, please let me set aside everything I think I know about sobriety, life, and you, so that I may be open to a new experience. Peace. Okay, so, hopefully everybody's been working on their 4th step. I mean, this really is, this is really the start of what we need to do to get better. And, if you don't do 4, you can't do 5. And when we read the big book today, it's going to tell us about 4 times in the space of 3 paragraphs that if we don't do the 5th step, we're going to get drunk. Right? That's simply that simple. If you're an alcoholic and you do the work, you're going to get better. If you don't do the work, sooner or later, if you're a real alcoholic, you're going to probably relapse again. And I have seen people, I've seen people that have managed to stay sober by going to lots of meetings that haven't actually done the steps. And I got to tell you, I wouldn't want to be them, because I was them. And I know that we can manage, some people can manage to stay sober, but they're still restless, irritable, and discontent. And their life, it feels like we're doing time. When we get off the booze and we don't have any serenity, peace of mind, or happiness, and we're tense and we've got anxiety, and we wake up in the middle of the night thinking about that son of a bitch. That's like we're doing time until we can once again take a drink. So we do these steps and we actually become different people. And I think I became the person that once I got rid of all the crap, once I got rid of the ice that was formed around my heart, I became the person I think that I was supposed to be. And again, this is where it starts. So, we looked at our resentments, we looked at our fears, and we looked at the harms and hurts that we've done other people. And that's, all of those sheets. And hopefully, I understood those sheets a little bit better when I wrote out those summaries that I talked about last week. When I looked at the summaries and I started with my character defects and I went backwards, I learned a lot. I learned that being a commissioned salesman, I mean, it was absolutely insane. But I learned that my selfishness, my greed, would lead me to do things as far as taking somebody else's deal where it wasn't even my deal, but I needed that deal as much as I needed a drink. And I thought I was going to die without that deal, and that was because of my gall darn selfishness and my greed. And I discovered that I was doing all kinds of things because of my defects of characters, that I was absolutely out of control. And when I did the 4-step, for the first time, I got a good look at the way I'd been showing up in my life. But when I shared it with another person, and that person pointed out a lot of things to me, it helped me see even further. And we'll talk a little bit about that. I mentioned, I think a couple weeks ago, if confession worked, I was raised a Catholic, right? I'm not practicing now, but there are one heck of a lot of alcoholic priests, and there's one heck of a lot of alcoholic Catholics. If confession worked, that wouldn't be the case. So we need more than just confession. More than confession. So I think today what we're going to do is we'll start out by reading a little bit. I wrote some stuff, and we're gonna read those real shortly. So let's go to the chapter Into Action. I like it. There's a lot of people that say that's not into thinking, it's into action, right? We've been trying to think our way out of this for a long time, and that doesn't work. We've got to act our way into better living and into better thinking. So we do the actions first, and then our thinking follows. Okay, so we've done the 4-step according to the Big Book. We've looked at our grosser handicaps. We've looked at our resentments. We've looked at our fears. We've looked at the hurts and the harms that we've done other people. And then we saw that our basic character defects that cause us to do this are our selfishness, our dishonesty, our self-seeking behavior, the way fear drives us, and our inconsideration of others. Man, we don't consider others. We think about ourselves, right? So, and one of the things that really amazes me is Bill Wilson started writing this book when he was 3 years sober. And Bill Wilson was a blackout drunk, but he was also a selfish, self-centered son of a bitch just like me. And the fact that he was able to write these instructions that early in his sobriety, the instructions that have saved countless millions of people, it just totally amazes me. And I mean, I honestly believe that Bill's pencil had it might have been his pencil, but he had a lot of help when he put these things down on paper. I got to tell you. So, chapter 6, Into Action. Got to have a pen in my hand. Having made our personal inventory, right? So, if you guys have not finished your 4-step, I'm telling you, you can get this done in a couple of nights, right? Or if you're only half done, just work hard on it, because once you get it done and you do your 5th step, the relief that you will eventually feel is worth any inconvenience that you might need to go through. And I just remember when I was doing my 4-step, I found all kinds of things that all of a sudden I had to do that took precedence, like cleaning my bathroom, like grocery shopping, like just doing all kinds of weird things that I'd never done. I did those instead of do this because I just didn't want to do it. But I finally, when it got to the end and I made my appointment with my sponsor, I buckled down and I got this thing done. So I want everybody, schedule your 5th step for sometime this week. Schedule it for this weekend. Now, if you don't have anybody to do it, grab somebody from a meeting, man. I guess I would be available, but I'm working straight through this week, so I'm not. But you go into any meeting, people are going to be honored that you ask them to hear their 5th step. And the way that we do it in Code Blue, it should only take about 2 hours. I've given 2 5th steps to people who listen to mine, and each of them were about 2 hours. And I've only heard in my limited sobriety, I've heard 4 5th steps from other people, and those were all about 2 hours when you do it this way. So, and you got to remember, you're not impinging on somebody, you're actually honoring them by asking them for help. So, schedule that 5th step, because next week we're going to take 6 and 7. And I mean, the steps work. You've done 4, you've done 5, and then we do 6 and 7, and then we're going to move on to 8 and 9. We got to do the steps in a row. That's how they're written, and that's how they work, right? So, and I mean, I've seen people, and I was one of them that tried to. I'm going to do this step. I'm going to do that step. Maybe I'll go back to that step, but I'm not doing that step. And I never ever was able to get sober or get rid of my resentments and my fears that way. So. We do the steps in order as they're written in the book, and that's when the miracle happens. So please, get somebody and just schedule your 5th step. Put your fear aside, man. Put your fear. Don't listen to what your head might be telling you, that this is scary, or that it's going to be an inconvenience, or that somebody doesn't want to do. Nonsense. Put your fears ahead, whatever your head's telling you, and just get somebody and schedule it. And I'm telling you, it's gonna make such a difference in your life. So, page 72. Having made our personal inventory, what shall we do about it? Okay, so we're going to underline the next couple of lines. We have been trying to get a new attitude, a new relationship with our Creator. Okay, so underline that, and next to it write, don't have it yet. We don't have it yet, right? But we're gonna get there, right? We've been trying to get a new attitude, a new relationship with our Creator. Next to it, right, don't have it yet, but we're close. And to discover the obstacles in our path. Okay, underline the next 6 words. We have admitted certain defects. Okay, next to that, we're going to write 4th column. 4th column. So again, those defects are selfishness, dishonesty, self-seeking behavior, frightened behavior, and inconsideration of others. And I was taught that from those stem all of our other defects of character, all of them. We have ascertained in a rough way what the trouble is. Okay, highlight to the end of the sentence. We have put our finger on the weak items in our personal inventory. Okay, so our trouble is that we are run by our resentments, we are run by our fears, and we are run by our guilt, shame, and remorse based on what we've done to other people. You know, whether we've done these things to other people when we're drunk, or whether we've done them when we're hungover, or whether we've done them in periods of sobriety, it doesn't matter. We still hurt people, right? Now, these are about to be cast out. Okay, so we're going to double underline the next 6 words. This requires action on our part. Right? We've got to take action, right? It's into action, not into thinking. Which, when completed, will mean that we have admitted to God, to ourselves, and to another human being the exact nature of our defects. Next to the exact nature of our defects, again, write 4th column. And all that is, guys, that's the 4th column on all these sheets that we've checked, right? That's the 4th column. This brings us to the 5th step in the program of recovery mentioned in the preceding chapter. This is perhaps difficult, especially discussing our defects with another person. We think we have done well enough in admitting these things to ourselves. There is doubt about that. Highlight this sentence. In actual practice, we usually find a solitary self-appraisal insufficient. Right? Whenever I did a solitary self-appraisal and I looked at myself by myself, I cut myself slack, and I always came up with the same conclusions that I'm getting screwed over by a lot of people. I'm a pretty good guy, and I'm a victim. I'm getting screwed over, and the world is really not treating me too good. Right? That's what happens when I try to look at things myself. Many of us thought it necessary to go much further. We will be more reconciled to discussing ourselves with another person when we see good reasons why we should do so. Okay, so we're gonna underline the next sentence and put a big 1 in front of it. This is the first reason. The best reason first. If we skip this vital step, we may not overcome drinking. Okay, so put a 1 next to that, highlight it. Off to the left, let's write something. If I am not honest, I will not have a healthy recovery. If I am not honest, I will not have a healthy recovery. Right? I mean, when we're hanging on to secrets and things that we know that we've done and defects that we know we have, we're isolated from everybody else. We're isolated. I don't care how many meetings you go to, you're still going to be isolated from everybody. If I am not honest, I will not have a healthy recovery. When we do this step, one of the great things that happens is our loneliness and our isolation starts to go away. Time after time, newcomers have tried to keep to themselves certain facts about their lives. Trying to avoid this humbling experience, they have turned to easier methods. Okay, put a 2 in front of almost and underline the next 5 words. Almost invariably they got drunk. God, it just told us a couple sentences ago we may not overcome drinking. Now they're going to tell us that when we hold stuff back, just about all of us get drunk. Right? Second reason. Having persevered with the rest of the program, they wondered why they fell. Okay, underline wondered why they fell and put a 3 next to that. And it's going to give us another reason. And then we're going to highlight the next 5 lines, pardon me. We think the reason is that they never completed their house cleaning. They took inventory all right, but hung on to some of the worst items in stock. They only thought they had lost their egoism and fear. They only thought they had humbled themselves. You can stop highlighting there. So yeah, at the third time, why did they fall? Why did they go back to drinking, right? Because they did not do a thorough house cleaning. But they had not learned enough of, highlight, humility, fearlessness, and honesty. Just those words. They had not learned enough of humility, fearlessness, and honesty in the sense we find it necessary until they told someone else all their life story. Okay, so underline all their life story. Now, this is what throws some people off. You know, they're not sure what to do about their 4th step, and all of a sudden they get to this point in the book and they go, aha! I'm going to write a biography of my life. That's what they mean, all their life story. That's absolutely what they don't mean. I mean, the fact that I was born in 1963 in St. Cloud, Minnesota, the fact that I graduated early from high school, the fact that I moved around to many different places when I was a kid, I mean, that isn't going to help me at all. I know that. What's going to help me, and by the way, all those things, if I write out my story, it's going to mask, it's going to hide from me the things that I need to know. So what we need to do in our 4th step, and ultimately in our 5th step, is we've got to look at our life story as far as our resentments, as far as our fears, and as far as the harms we've done other people. Now, I didn't just all of a sudden get resentments when I became a blackout drunk, right? I didn't all of a sudden start to get fears about everything when I started to use marijuana and pills and LSD. I mean, I had these things from the time I was a small child, right? So I need to look at how these resentments and how these fears caused me to harm other people, right? So I'm looking at my whole life story in regard to my resentments, my fears, and the harms and hurts that I've done other people, right? That's what I need to look at. And then I need to look at why I have these things and why I act that way, and that's because of my character defects. Remember, a little bit earlier in the book, it said that alcohol was but a symptom. It's just a symptom, man. We're trying to medicate the real problem, right? Which is our resentments, our fears, and the guilt, shame, and remorse. We're trying to medicate that with booze and drugs, maybe with gambling, maybe with sex, maybe with eating. Whatever your gig is. More than most people, the alcoholic leads a double life. He is very much the actor. Okay. Underline the next 4 lines. To the outer world, he presents his stage character. This is the one he likes his fellows to see. He wants to enjoy a certain reputation, but knows in his heart he doesn't deserve it. So next to that, we're going to write self-seeking. Okay? Self-seeking. So I worked really hard to make people think I was somebody that I wasn't. I was running around like a maniac trying to get people to believe that I was somebody who I was not, right? I wanted them to, hey, John's a good guy. He cares. He does this. He does that. I mean, it was ridiculous. And that took a lot of effort on my part, and I was unsuccessful at it. The inconsistency is made worse by the things he does on his sprees. Coming to his senses, he is revolted at certain episodes he vaguely remembers. These memories are a nightmare. He trembles to think someone might have observed him. As fast as he can, he pushes these memories far inside himself. He hopes they will never see the light of day. Underline, he is under constant fear and tension. And then put a 4 next to that. That makes for more drinking. Okay, so we got to get all this crap out. We've got to share it with God and another person. And then all of a sudden what happens is a lot of that fear and a lot of that tension is going to go away. And then we're not going to have to medicate ourselves with booze and drugs and the other things, right? And by the way, when we do things, right? When we do things, because we alcoholics know the difference between right and wrong. And, I wake up and, after a hard drunk, or I used to do stuff when I was hungover. I was really mean when I was hungover. And I would do things. And in order for me to live with myself, what I had to do is I had to get mad at the people that I harmed. I had to, and I did that through resentments, because when I had resentments at them, all of a sudden my guilt and shame, it was a little bit easier to take because I said it's their damn fault. If they wouldn't have done that to me, I wouldn't have had to do that, right? So when I relived these resentments over and over again, I changed them enough so that I was not guilty of anything, and the other person was guilty of everything. That way I could live with myself a little bit easier, right? So those resentments, we need them, and so we can live with ourselves, right? So we can blame the other people. Psychologists are inclined to agree with us. We have spent thousands of dollars for examinations. We know but few instances where we have given these doctors a fair break. We have seldom told them the whole truth, nor have we followed their advice. Unwilling to be honest with these sympathetic men, underline, we were honest with no one else. Just that little phrase there. Small wonder many in the medical profession have a low opinion of alcoholics and their chance for recovery. I mean, I know people that run treatment halfway houses, and they're sober, right? They're sober people that run these. And they always just say, you can't trust those damn addicts and alcoholics, and I'm sitting here, well, wait a minute, you're a recovered alcoholic, but it's funny, but doctors think the same thing, and it's true that we might pay a psychologist or a psychiatrist $200 an hour, and we're going to lie to them. I mean, even when I used to go to the medical doctors, well, John, how much are you drinking? a couple of beers a day. I mean, I would lie about everything, right? So you go to these doctors for help, and then you don't even tell them the truth. So we can be honest with no one else, right? So you guys don't have to go back, but I'm just going to go back to page 58 real quick, right, where it said, people who cannot or will not completely give themselves to this simple program, constitutionally incapable of being honest with themselves. A little bit further down, manner of living which demands rigorous honesty, right? If you can't be honest, we wrote it down, you are a cannot. Right, so if we can't be honest here, we're probably not going to recover. That's all there is to it. And you know what? We do have years of rationalization and justification. And so when we do our 4-step and we write all this stuff out, we're going to be as honest as we possibly can. And when we share in our 5th step, we're going to be as honest as we possibly can. But we need that other person there to help us see things that we can't see, right? And it's a big step when we go out and we share this with another person, because that's going to open the door for us to be more honest with other people. So this is we've got to do this, man. Let's see here. Okay, so the bottom line, we're going to highlight it. We must, circle must, be entirely honest with somebody. Underline somebody, and underneath it write not everyone. Not everyone. We must, circle must, be entirely honest with somebody. Again, not everyone. If we expect to live long or happily in this world. I mean, that's kind of, I guess we could put a 5 next to that one, right? Because it's telling us that if we don't do it, we're not going to live long or happily in this world. So that's kind of going to tell me that we're probably going to drink again, or we're going to be living sober with a lot of anger and a lot of anxiety and a lot of fear. And I mean, why try to go through and do all this if we can't have a good life, right? So, and again, I guess at the top of the page, let's write something else. Top of the page, right? Confession is for absolution. 5th step is for recovery. Confession is for absolution. 5th step is for recovery. And again, the priests and the Catholics, if confession worked, there wouldn't be so many doggone priest alcoholics and so many doggone Catholic alcoholics. So confession is good for the soul, but we need to do the 5th step if we want to recover. And I know a guy, I shouldn't say I know him, but I've listened to this speaker, and he sponsors a lot of Catholic priests, and he says the only people worse to sponsor than Catholic priests, because they think they know everything about God, are drug and alcohol counselors. He said those guys are the worst, but priests are a close second, right? So we've got to have a completely open and new attitude about our higher power, and our 5th step is going to help us to get there. Rightly and naturally, underline, we think well before we choose the person or persons with whom to take this intimate and confidential step. Highlight that or underline that, and we're going to write 5th step instruction. We're going to get a lot of 5th step instructions. That's one of them. 5th step instruction. We think well before we choose the person or persons with whom to take this intimate and confidential step. So, if you got somebody in a meeting, right, and this person likes to gossip a lot, and can't hold their water or hold their secrets, that's probably not the person that you're gonna share your 5th step with, right? So we're gonna think well, long and hard before we share this with somebody. It's gonna give us a few more instructions on how to do that. And these are all, this whole paragraph are essentially 5th step instructions. Those of us belonging to a religious denomination which requires confession must, circle that must, and of course will want to go to the properly appointed authority whose duty it is to receive it. So they're saying that if we are involved in some sort of religion, And if it requires it, our religion requires it, he's telling us that we have to do it. We must do it. Now, if you're not practicing any kind of religion, then that's okay, right? Because we've got spirituality, and we're just going to do it hopefully with our sponsor. Though we have no religious connection, right? That's a lot of us, not all of us, but that's some of us, I should say. We may still do well to talk with somebody ordained by an established religion. So again, it's telling us not to scoff and to be open-minded. We often find such a person quick to see and understand our problem. Of course, we sometimes encounter people who do not understand alcoholics. Okay, so we're going to write fifth step instructions next to this whole next paragraph here. If we cannot or would rather not do this, we search our acquaintance, underline, for a closed-mouthed, understanding friend. Okay, so right there, we've got two characteristics that we're going to look for. Somebody who's closed-mouthed and somebody who's understanding. I mean, I have not seen it firsthand, but I've heard stories about people that have shared things in a fifth step, and then the person that heard it, let slip or let blab some stuff. And that, I mean, somebody in early sobriety, that could be devastating to somebody. So we're going to find somebody who's closed-mouthed, right? And also who's understanding, okay? Perhaps our doctor or psychologist will be the person. Okay, so we're going to underline to the end of the paragraph. It may be one of our own family, but we cannot disclose anything to our wives or our parents which will hurt them and make them unhappy. We have no right to save our own skin at another person's expense. Such parts of our story we tell to someone who will understand yet be unaffected. And then we're going to double underline this last sentence. The rule is we must be hard on ourselves, but always considerate of others. Right? That's a change of pace for most of us. Next to that last sentence, we're going to write rigorous honesty. Rigorous honesty. And these are also some instructions, too, that we're going to use when we get to steps 8 and 9. Right? Because when we get to steps 8 and 9, we're not going to go out and make amends that might damage somebody else. Right? If anybody else is involved who might get damaged, we're not going to run out to save our own skin if somebody else is going to be hurt by it, right? That's why we always need the counsel of our sponsors. And again, when we do steps 8 and 9, the rule is we got to be hard on ourselves, but always considerate of others. Notwithstanding the great necessity for discussing ourselves with someone, it may be one is so situated that there is no suitable person available. Okay, underline the next 4 lines. If that is so, this step may be postponed. Only, however, if we hold ourselves in complete readiness to go through with it at the first opportunity. Stop highlighting there, and you can write instruction again. That's another instruction. Now, you got to remember, though, when this book was written, there were not meetings all over the place with recovered alcoholics who have done this work, who are closed-mouthed and willing to help you, right? When this book came out, there was only 100 people that had done this work. So that's why they're giving us these instructions, maybe somebody in our family or a minister or a priest or something like that. Today we've got rooms full of willing, helpful, friendly alcoholics, right? Who are recovered, who've done the work, that'll be only too happy and that will be honored to listen to our fifth step and to help us see what we can't see, right? So this isn't necessarily as true today as it was. Well, it's not true today like it was back then. But it is saying, and I mean, it is saying that if for some reason we can't, we've got to be ready to do it at the very first opportunity, right? We say this because we are very anxious that we talk to the right person. It is important that he be able to keep a confidence, he or she. I mean, I'm a firm believer that men sponsor men and women sponsor women, right? I have not seen an unattractive woman since I turned 12, so it's very important that men do with men and women with women. It is important that he or she be able to keep a confidence. that he fully understand and approve what we are driving at, that he will not try to change our plan. Underline, next sentence, but we must, circle must, not use this as a mere excuse to postpone. I mean, if we start using this as an excuse to postpone, we might get drunk, right? We get drunk. I don't know about you guys, but whenever I relapsed, I'd open my eyes and the first thing I think about is when am I going to be able to drink again? It puts me back to square zero, and I don't want to do that. So at the top of the page, we're going to write something. We're going to write, move from self-centered to God-centered, little arrow, new life. Move from self-centered to God-centered, little arrow, new life. 6 years ago, if I would have heard a recording of myself saying that, I wouldn't have believed it. But you know what, man? I've got a higher power in my life today. And when I try to do what I think that higher power wants me to do, or what a sponsor or a friend counsels me to do, my life is much better. Much, much, much better. And God speaks through people. That's why we listen to our sponsors, and that's why we listen to other people and alcoholics. Okay, so highlight the next sentence because it's another instruction. When we decide who is to hear our story, we waste no time. Right? So that's why, guys, get it done this week. When we decide who is to hear our story, we waste no time. We have a written inventory and are prepared for a long talk. We explain to our partner what we are about to do and why we have to do it. Right? We have to do it because we want to overcome drinking and we want to learn how to live a different way. He/she should realize that we are engaged, underline, upon a life and death errand. Just that little bit there. Upon a life and death errand. And this is a life and death errand. I mean, how many people, being in these rooms for the last 6 years, I can't tell you, the number of people that have died. Whether it's a car crash or whether their liver blew out, whether they hung themselves or put a bullet in their head. I mean, this is a deadly disease, and make no bones about it. People are dying all over the place from this disease. So this is a life and death errand. And next to that, by the way, we can write 2 hours is enough. That was from my sponsor. He was real adamant that if we do the 4-step the way that he taught me in Code Blue, he said we can usually get the 5th step done in about 2 hours. Because we do most of the work ourselves. When we're running through these columns this way, and then when we write out the summaries, goodness sakes, I mean, for me, 95% of this crap went away of its own accord, right? So when I did my 5th step, both of them I've given 2 of them. They were both about 2 hours, and that was enough, right? Most people approached in this way will be glad to help, right? They're going to be happy to help you. They will be honored. There it is. They will be honored by our confidence. Okay, so I'm gonna read just a little bit out of the 12 and 12, just a little bit. All of AA's 12 steps ask us to go contrary to our natural desires. They all deflate our egos. Remember, we're egomaniacs with inferiority complexes. They all deflate our egos. When it comes to ego deflation, few steps are harder to take than 5. But scarcely any step is more necessary to long-time sobriety and peace of mind than this one. There it is again, right in the 12 and 12. If even if we can manage to stay sober, we're not going to have any peace of mind. And what's it worth? I don't want to be sober if my life's going to be horrible. AA experience has taught us we cannot live alone with our pressing problems and the character defects which cause or aggravate them. We've been living alone with this crap forever. If we have swept the searchlight of step 4 back and forth over our careers, and it has revealed in stark relief those experiences we'd rather not remember, if we have come to know how wrong thinking and action have hurt us and others, then the need to quit living by ourselves with those tormenting ghosts of yesterday gets more urgent than ever. We have to talk to somebody about them, right? Again, if we don't do it, we're just hurting ourselves. Again, yet AA's experience means anything at all. This is not only unwise, but is actually a perilous resolve. Few muddled attitudes have caused us more trouble than holding back on step 5. Some people are unable to stay sober at all. Others will relapse periodically until they really clean house. Right? One of the things that's going to happen, it goes further to say, is we're going to get rid of that horrible sense of isolation we've already had. I don't know about you guys, but I always, even when I came to a lot of meetings, I would sit in the corner and I knew that I was totally alone, man. I was apart from everybody. There were you guys and there was John sitting there. No matter how many meetings I went to, you do this work, and instead of being apart from, we're now a part of, right? I mean, that's a much better way to live. See if there's anything else I got here. Until we actually sit down and talk aloud about what we have so long hidden, our willingness to clean house is still largely theoretical. When we are honest with another person, it confirms that we have been honest with ourselves and with God, right? And it tells us that if we don't do this, what comes to us alone may be garbled by our own rationalization and wishful thinking. The benefit of talking to another person is that we can get his or her direct comment and counsel on our situation, right? So we need somebody else to help us see what we cannot see. All right, so this is kind of cool, man. We're going to highlight the next sentence here. We pocket our pride and go to it, illuminating every twist of character, every dark cranny of the past. Okay, underline that sentence. And now we're going to label the 5th step promises. Everybody, at all the meetings, we read the 9th step promises. I got to tell you, man, when I got to this point in my recovery, the 5th step promises were the most amazing thing I'd ever experienced in my life. And they didn't happen right away, but they did happen. So once we've done it, once we have taken this step withholding nothing, okay, we're going to list 8 of them. So put a 1 in front of we. We are delighted. That's the first 5th step promise, man. Some of us haven't been delighted in a long time. Put a 2 in front of we. We can look the world in the eye. Man, I used to be looking at my shoes. I couldn't look anybody in the eye. I was so ashamed of who I was. Put a 3 in front of we. We can be alone at perfect peace and ease. Right? I could not be. When I was alone, my mind, the voices in my head would start screaming at me and driving me nuts. The committee would get me going. Now I enjoy being alone. I enjoy being alone with no TV or anything, right? Put a 4 in front of our fears fall from us. Man, even when I sobered up and wasn't working the steps, I was worried, John, I'm going to get fired today. This is going to happen. That's going to happen. This is going to happen. That ain't going to work out well. Oh, I can't do it. I was just afraid of everything. Put a 5 in front of we. We begin to feel the nearness of our Creator, right? And that happened for me. All of a sudden, when my prayers took on a little bit more meaning, right, after my 5th step. Put a 6 in front of we. We may have had certain spiritual beliefs, but now we begin to have a spiritual experience. The whole idea of working these steps is that we have a spiritual experience, right? We discover a higher power and we live a new way. Put a 7 in front of the feeling that the drink problem has disappeared will often come strongly. Now, right here, and that happened to me. My obsession to drink was lifted clean out of me somewhere right in this area the first time I was going through the steps. But my sponsor said, John, that's also a warning. I said, well, what do you mean it's a warning? It's wonderful. He said, well, he said he's seen a lot of people who felt so good after the 5th step that they felt they didn't need to go further, right? And if we don't go further, what happens, right? Those character defects, they start to come back. We start to create pain and suffering for other people. Our self-will comes back. We think we're getting the shaft. People aren't treating us right anymore. Our resentments build up. And all of a sudden, we're feeling anxious, angry, and we remember the ease and comfort that comes with a drink. He said that's a warning as well. We've got to go through these steps, and then we've got to live by them, or else we're going to be in trouble. But it's a wonderful promise right here. Put an 8 in front of we. We feel we are on the broad highway walking hand in hand with the Spirit of the universe. Okay, so I had one sponsee, and we did his 5th step, and it was very thorough. And he called me up maybe 3 or 4 hours later, not because he forgot something, but he called me up. He said he was freaking out. He was freaking out because going through all of that stuff made him think that he was one of the worst persons on earth. And I said, you're trying to live a new life, and you're treating people better, and God sees what you're doing, and God is absolutely forgiving you. Right, but he was for about, and I said, you're gonna feel these promises. They're gonna come, and he did. He stressed himself out for another couple of days, but he called me back. It was about a week later, and he said, "Oh my God, all of these things that we read, these promises are starting to happen." So don't be worried if right off the bat you don't get a huge sense of relief, and if you're a little bit freaked out. Some of us react that way. All I can tell you is that God does forgive you, and hopefully the person that's hearing your 5th step is going to let you know that he or she has done many of the things that you have done, and then maybe they're not as bad as you think they are, and that God sees what you're trying to do with your life, and God has, because you are one of God's children, He's absolutely going to forgive you for these things, right? So we all react differently to this. Okay, so now we've got another instruction here. So we're going to underline the next sentence. It's 2 lines, essentially. You can write instruction next to it again. Returning home, we find a place where we can be quiet for an hour, carefully reviewing what we have done. So this is very important. We have just done our 5th step with somebody. We drive home, get your husband and your kids, or your wife and your kids, or whoever, no TV, nothing. You sit down and think about what you've done, and you be quiet for an hour, okay? And then we've got more. These are all instructions in here. We thank God from the bottom of our heart that we know Him better. Right, so we're gonna, we're gonna review what we did, and we're gonna thank God that we know Him better. Right, we don't know Him as much as we'd like to, but we know Him better. Okay, here's another instruction. Let's underline it. Underline the next 3 lines, I guess. Taking this book down from our shelf, we turn to the page which contained the 12 steps. Carefully reading the first 5 proposals. Okay, Bill didn't want to use the word steps again so quick, but that's what they are. So carefully reading the first 5 steps. Okay, underline this or circle it. We ask if we have omitted anything, and after ask, write God. So what we're going to do, this is kind of a prayer, right? So when we get home and we've sat for an hour and we're thinking about things, we pull this book down, we take a look at these steps, and then, some of our sponsors might say get on your knees, others might not, but this is a prayer. So it's something like, God, have I omitted anything? Please help me if I have, right? Now you'll be surprised that you yourself, something might come up, or when you're sponsoring other people and you've heard their 5th step, when they say this prayer, all of a sudden they might remember something that they didn't talk about, and they're going to call you back, or you're going to call your sponsor back and say, hey, guess what? I forgot something, right? I stole a little bit of money from work. Oh, how much? Well, $50,000. Oh, you forgot that. So, we're going to, it's a prayer, and right here you'll be surprised where people are going to be making a phone call, right? So off to the left, let's write, or anywhere in there, let's write faith replaces fear. Somewhere right in here, we're going to write faith replaces fear. Okay. And then where we have that word proposals, you can just write page 59, because that's, steps 1 through 5. We're going to look at them, and that's right on page 59. So you know where to go, right, to look at the first 5 steps, page 59. So we ask God if we have omitted anything. For we are building an arch through which we shall walk a free man at last. Okay, so we've got 4 questions here, and I'm going to give you a translation that was given to me. You can take it, you can leave it. I kind of like it, so I'm going to kind of translate these 4 questions. So again, Bill is forming a picture in our mind of like a Roman stone or a medieval stone arch that we are building, right? And the stones are the steps. And we're going to build that spiritual arch, and we're going to walk through it to freedom at last. So put a 1 in front of is, and we're going to highlight to the end of the page. But put a 1 in front of is. Is our work solid so far? So down at the bottom of the page, write small, put a 1, and just write, have I done my best? Have I done my best? Right? And again, we don't have to be perfect, but have we done our best? Is our work solid so far? 1, have I done my best? Put a 2 in front of R. Are the stones properly in place? Okay, so we're going to put a 2 and we're going to translate. Solid 1, 2, and 3rd step. Solid 1, 2, and 3rd step, right? Have we been solid in our work on steps 1, 2, and 3? Right? Is our work, are the stones properly in place? Put a 3 in front of have. Have we skimped on the cement put into the foundation? So the 3 translation is rigorously honest, question mark. Rigorously honest, question mark. Am I trying to hide something still? Am I holding back on something? And then put a 4 in front of have we tried to make mortar without sand? And then the 4 down below, we're just going to write done prayer work, question mark. Because when we're going through these steps, we're praying, we're asking our higher power for help throughout all of these. So 1, have I done my best? 2, solid 1, 2, and 3. 3, rigorously honest, question mark. And 4, done prayer work, question mark. Okay, so I'm going to read a few notes, and then I'm going to go over some of that paperwork that I gave you. So what I did, guys, and when I did my first, and I did this both, the sponsor that was assigned to me, and with the guy who had much more sobriety that I did it with 6 months later. When I met them, I had all of my sheets, and trust me, guys, I had a lot of them, and I had my summaries. But the first thing I did is I gave them kind of a 20-minute sketch of my life, just a 20-minute sketch. And then I had 10 things. I had my top 10, man, and I had to get those top 10 things off. And I went through my top 10 things right off the bat, right? One of them was a guy that I knew was related to my crack dealer, and he was dying of cirrhosis of the liver, and I stole a big chunk of crack from him and helped him look for it. That was eating me up. That was up there. Another one that I had was an act of cowardice where I let somebody else take the fall for me. That was eating my lunch. But I had 10 things of that nature that I just said, I'm going to go through these right off the bat because I got to get them off my chest. And I did those both, the first one I did and the second one. So I got those things off my chest first, and then I went through the columns, and I went through my big resentments, right? And the ones that had a lot of check marks, we talked about them, right? And we talked about my resentments, and I read my summaries to the fella too. And that's basically, when I did it with somebody, that's how I did it, and it seemed to work. And when I was done, You know, the first time the guy came to me and he left, so I sat alone in my apartment. The second one, I went over to my sponsor's house, and then I drove to a different location and I sat alone for an hour. So, I mean, that's how I did it, and that's kind of how I have the people that I do it, that I hear do it as well. So step 5, right? Into action, not into thinking. We have been trying to get a new attitude and a new relationship with our Creator. Now, when I did my 4-step, I did the very best I could, right? Working on my 4-step with the limited knowledge and experience I had. I did the best I could. But I had to take it to another person who has gone on before me and who has done the inventory according to the big book, right? And now that person is going to help me to glean more information out of each of the situations that I've gotten in my 4-step columns that we're going to talk about. Now, the reason we need to do this is because it's very difficult for me to see the truth and to see my defects of character, because for years and a lifetime I've been rationalizing and justifying the things that I've done and my attitudes. I've been telling John, it's okay that you got that deal from that person. John, it's okay that you treated her like that. John, it's okay you did that, right? And I can always find an excuse to let myself off the hook. I need another human to look at me objectively and to help me see the things that I can't see. Okay? So that's why one of the reasons I've got to go to another person, because I'm starting out on a new lifetime engagement and I need all the help I can get to have a successful life. I did the best I could on the inventory process, but a solitary self-appraisal is insufficient. The book tells us that. I need God and another human to help me see what I can't see. Again, we need help because we've been leading a double life. We have become the world's greatest con artists, the world's greatest manipulators. I mean, you cannot be a successful alcoholic for years like me if you didn't learn how to lie, cheat, con, manipulate, steal, and do whatever the hell you got to do, right, to keep yourself and money and booze and drugs and a job. You know, but we have a conscience, right? And I don't think that we can live with ourselves if we really had to see what we are doing, right? When we're drinking and when we're hungover. And what we do, guys, is we use our resentments. We use our resentments to transfer all blame to other people so that we can live with ourselves. That's how we get to live with ourselves, by blaming the other people. Now, if we've been doing it for 5, 10, 20, 30 years, you come to AA and you take step 4, you're going to be as honest as you can with yourself. But let's face it, we cannot be completely honest with ourselves. It's impossible. So I need to take this to another human being, a human being who has walked this walk before and who has done steps 4 through 9 according to the big book. I want somebody that's done the work according to the big book. And I'm going to have them help me see the things that I cannot see about me. For example, you know, I'm working across these columns and I say, well, DJ, this was caused by my sex instinct. And he said, no, it wasn't. You were trying to build your self-esteem. Really? Okay, so then we talk about it. I go, well, DJ, this was caused by my fear. No, John, that was just plain dishonesty. And we talk about it, right? So he's going to help me see things that I can't see. I want to get some feedback, right, when I'm running these columns, and I need another person to do that. We're getting ready to start a lifetime-changing process. We need to be sure that we're going to change the right things, right, so that we can have peace of mind in the future. Now, remember, earlier in the book, it said ideas, emotions, and attitudes, and this was Carl Jung, the psychologist. He was talking about now and again, here and there, people that had recovered from alcoholism, and it was like getting struck by lightning before these steps. He said ideas, emotions, and attitudes, which were once the guiding forces of these men, are suddenly cast to one side, and a completely new set of conceptions and motives begin to dominate them. Now, that happens to us, but it happens to us slowly through the working of the steps, and this is the beginning of it, right? This is the beginning. So when you're looking for somebody to hear your 5th step, do they know the program? Do they know the program? If they do, they can help you. If they don't know the program, it's just confession, right? We need more than confession. We need more. So I need to know when I'm done with my fifth step, I need to know what I'm going to ask God's help to become willing to remove in 6. I'm going to have to, and then I'm going to have to ask for God's help to remove them in 7. I need to know what they are, right? Because I also am going to work against these defects of character in my daily life. Right? I automatically these things don't just go away. With God's help, we have to work against ourselves, against our very natures to change them. Again, confession is for absolution, but the fifth step is for recovery. So we read the reasons why we got to do the fifth step. We're going to get drunk. That's why, right? And again, it says we're building an arch through which we're going to walk to freedom. Step 1, or the first stone in that arch, is willingness. Willingness is the foundation stone, right? We got to become willing to change. Step 2 is belief. Believing that we can do it. That's the cornerstone. Step 3, a simple idea that God's going to be our director. That's the keystone that holds the whole damn arch together, right? We do 4 and 5. We got 2 more stones in that arch, right? And we're on our way. So, this, you hear people in these meetings say that alcoholism is a disease of perception. What do they mean? It's a disease of perception, right? Well, I'm 9 months, 6 or 9 months sober, and I'm not working these steps. My self-will is starting to come back, right? When I first went back to work, I was just happy to have a job, right? Oh, thank you for taking me back. I really appreciate that. Anybody else would have fired me, right? But after 9 months, my perceptions start to change, and I start to think that my boss and the other employees, they're out to get me and they're taking advantage of me. They're treating me like crap, right? So, my sponsor is like, John, no matter what you think, don't you quit that job, right? And I don't, because I can't see these things because I haven't done my fifth step. But once I've done my fifth step, my perceptions begin to change, right? But until then, it's like my sponsor, he says, hey, John, you treated that person like crap. You go over there and you make an amend. And I'm going to say, the hell I did. They screwed me. And my sponsor is going to have to help me. He's going to say, it doesn't matter what they did. You go over there and make amends. So I can't see things, and I do need the help of a sponsor. Again, we act ourselves into better thinking and better living. We cannot think our way out of it. When I perceive the world wrongly, my emotions begin to build and build and build. And when I say perceive it wrongly, again, I'm the victim. These guys, my boss is screwing me. My girlfriend is treating me bad. My parents are so unfair. They can't do, and even though they're not, right? And my emotions start to build up. They start to build up, and all of a sudden I might get a flat tire, and it pushes me over the edge, right? Because I'm not seeing things. Again, I've been perceiving myself as a victim, and when I do this over and over and over again, I'm gonna be restless, irritable, discontent, and I'm gonna snap. Right? I'm gonna snap, and I'm gonna drink, and somebody's gonna say, "Well, John, you just got your job back. You just reassembled your friends and your family. Your life started to turn around. Why did you ruin it all by yet another spree? Now you have no job, your family's disgusted, you crashed your car, and you're in jail. Why did you do it?" And, I'm like, well, I got a flat tire, right? But that wasn't it. It's because I was perceiving myself as getting screwed by the world, right? The boss not treating me right, my girlfriend snubbed me, the IRS is out to get me, everybody's out to screw me. Now, the funny thing is, when we take a drink, all of a sudden my perceptions change and I can handle these. Everything changes. The minute I drink and I see things differently for about 2 hours, right? For about 2 hours, but then I get drunk, I get blacked out, I wake up, and then I have to start all over again, right? So this fourth and fifth step is the beginning of seeing things as they really are, seeing the truth of things as they really are, man. And when we can do that, we don't cause the hurts and harms. We don't get the guilt and shame. We don't have all that resentment. So we get some peace of mind, some serenity, and some happiness. And then that's with no drink or drug necessary, man. So we've got to do this. This is the beginning. So let's look at, real quick, now these are things too, guys, that you're going to use when you're out there hearing somebody else's fifth step, right? But the first one, this little page, suggested preparation for the fifth step. So what we're going to do is in the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous, we're going to read page 72 to the first page of 73, right? Also in the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous, read the first paragraph from page 75. Now this is also a great time to pray. We always do the third step prayer too. So now having done all the preparation of your fourth step along with any sponsor suggestions or any from your fifth step receiver, it's time to do the fifth step. Now again, these are just instructions. When you're done, you go to a quiet place where you're going to spend the next hour. When you arrive, you read again from the Big Book, the last two paragraphs of page 75. Please answer the questions in that reading. Those are those 4 questions that we just finished up with. When your hour is completed, open the question envelope. Oops, that was supposed to be in an envelope. So, but then answer those questions. And then when you're done writing them out, open and read the answer envelope that we furnished you. I didn't have any envelopes. Now we suggest that you call your sponsor or fifth step receiver, or both if you choose. Now these are some other helpful recommendations, right? For the fifth step receiver, right? So before you get started, you pray, that they're going to be ready. You bring the Big Book. Bring the question and answer envelopes and the instruction sheet for the fifth step preparation. Bring all the 4-step sheets. Bring the 12 summaries we're supposed to write. And guys, if you haven't written the summaries, get your fifth. Go with what you got. Schedule your fifth step and run with what you got. We got to get it done. We can always go back and do another more thorough one later, but we got to get this crap out right now or we might drink again. Read a summary over the phone so that they show they've got ownership. Don't make plans for later in the day, right? Keep it open-ended. Take as long as they want because it's the opportunity of a lifetime. Consider where they're going to go for the hour afterwards. Bring a little bit of food and beverage. And then again, day of the fifth step, you pray for the highest good that God speaks through me. Pray that this could actually be both the giver and the receiver. Pray that I don't take on their problems. That's the receiver. Pray that I can be an opening for the person to step through to be closer to God, that I can be a tool, a channel, and that I am not there to fix them or find out what's wrong. And I mean, for me, when I'm sponsoring somebody and they relapse and they disappear, the first thing I do is blame myself. And you know what? It isn't up to me, right? It's up to them to do the work, and it's up to them and God, right? All I can do is show people what I did. We meditate. Begin the session, cover clocks and watches. Have your paper or notebook and pen ready. Kleenex and water. Let them know it's okay to cry. I love this one, man, and my sponsor did this. Light a candle as a reminder of God's presence. Another guy put an extra chair there, right, so that we know that God's listening too. You tell them that you're trustworthy. Tell them you might be taking notes so that you can go back to stuff, right? Because again, the person hearing it is going to want to help you see things you can't see. Let them know you'll listen and ask questions if I need to guide you or be more clear. Remember that in the fourth step, we discover what is blocking us from God. What we got to do is we got to get rid of the crap that's keeping God away from us, right? If we can get rid of that, God can come in, right, in 6 and 7, because we need God's help to get rid of these doggone defects. We're going to come closer to God, find value in God, and pray. We always start with pray. Here it is. Here was my top 10. Before we get started, is there anything you want to get off your chest first? What's the thing that you've been thinking about all along today on the way over here, right? I was very happy to get those top 10 things. Give me the ugliest you got. There's the quick story on page 3. A quick story, just a quick story. We don't laugh or take lightly what they say because their stuff's serious. We be gentle. We create a spirit of trust. We obviously, when we can tell that the person is very ashamed of things, we're going to share some of our own story, because I got to tell you, every fifth step that I've heard, including mine, is the same. We're all the same. We've got different names in there and different things, but we've all done exactly the same thing. We have the same fears. We have the same resentments. We've all done the same harms and hurts. And if God can forgive us, He's going to forgive you guys too. Watch body language. See how they sit. Breathe. I'm a big one, man. I remember my first two. I was holding my breath. Right? They had to breathe, John. Breathe. Right? These are just things that when you're listening, I understand, I hear you, that's tough. Sorry you had to go through that. How's that affected you? And these are also phrases that we can learn to use in our daily lives as well, right? When we're listening to our significant other who's really pissed at us, right? You have an issue here that requires some work when you go to the 6th and 7th step. So there's going to be some strange things coming up here. Summaries. I have them read all the summaries. Listen for ownership. We want to make everybody understand their defects of character and how those defects have been driving them. Column 4, right? That's what we're going to have to ask God's help for in 6 and 7. And then like my buddy Eric, he'll come and he'll talk on step 9 a little bit. He said that when he was done with the 5th step, he saw that the mess of his life was his. And as soon as he understood that the mess of his life was his, he realized that he could clean it up with God's help. That was a big turning point for him, right? He made the mess, and now he's going to clean it up with God's help, right? It's good when they look at these defects of character. We can write out some of the opposite for what these defects are, right? Generous instead of selfish, honest instead of dishonest, courageous instead of fearful. Define the shortcoming. The shortcoming is just a mistaken way of being, right? It doesn't mean we're horrible people. We're just mistaken, right? Remember, we're sick. Harms and shames, right? The harms and shames and the secrets that are killing us. We got to get them out. And if you've never talked to me, hey, I'm going to take this to the grave with me, but you got to let me know. You've got to get these things out so you can move on with your life, right? Questions. Now these questions, I didn't understand them, and some of them I still don't understand, but these are coming from people that know a lot more than me, right? So the questions we ask, and I ask everybody when I hear their 5th step, and I always ask myself, do you have eating disorders? If heterosexual, have you had homosexual experiences? Sex with animals? Have you ever had an abortion? I mean, sometimes people that have had abortions, both female and men, if they're in the relationship, that's killing them. I mean, that's a big one, and I don't want to get political. That keeps people drunk sometimes, right? So we got to. Have you had an abortion? Have you been a victim of incest? Right? Sometimes we need to send people to get professional help, right? Talks a little bit about sexual abuse. I mean, have you ever been raped, molested, or beaten? Have you ever been a sexual abuse, incest, or physical abuse perpetrator? When you ask that question to somebody, so they might break down crying and find out that they've done some stuff. We've got to hear about it. Have you ever maimed or killed anyone? Have you ever stolen or shoplifted? I mean, thank God I've never had anybody say yes to that one, right? I don't know what I would do. I don't know. That's above my pay grade. Have you ever had dealings with the occult, right? Is there anything else you are keeping a secret? Right? So again, we read the 5th step promises on page 75. Remember, I'm trustworthy, and I'm not going to say anything. You may feel results now or later, either powerful or slow. And remember, some people freak out at the beginning, but over the course of time, usually everybody gets a lot better, right? And remember, we're not done. Some of us feel so good we think we're done. And, we're done and the obsession has been lifted. I think I'm going to work that extra time at work. I'm sorry, because I need more money to buy a new car, right? And we stop doing things because we think we're cured. We are not. We do not. And, it's okay to burn your 5th step when you're done as long as you've made a copy of it. But we need a copy of it because we are going to need those names for 8 and 9, man. And I mean, you know, to this day, I like to go back and look at it. And I got to tell you guys, the stuff that I thought was so bad, I mean, I'll share just about anything I've ever done, you know, here at Code Blue or with anybody, because it doesn't bother me anymore. Because you know what? I was a sick person. That's the way I was. I'm no longer that way. And if me sharing some of the worst mistakes I've made in my life helps other people, even all the better, right? And then you send them away for the quiet hour, and we always thank them. You're courageous. You've been searching for value in God. What's God in your life for God to lean on? I love and respect you, and God loves you. Hug, and you're done. So keep these, because when you're hearing somebody's fifth step, these are going to be invaluable for you. So I guess that's it, man. And you know, again, just get somebody, make an appointment, and get the darn thing done, because we are going to be taking steps 6 and 7 next Tuesday, right? And then the following Tuesday, we're going to be doing our 8th step and talking about how to do 9. And then step 9 is going to take place probably for a long time, because things always crop up. And by the way, before I did my second 5th step, I think it was the day before. God works in funny ways. It was the day before my second 5th step. I remembered something that I had done in a blackout, and I said, "That's it. God's not going to forgive me, man. I might as well just get the bottle and start drinking now. This is the worst thing ever." You know, and I had to call my sponsor and talk about it. And he kind of laughed and told me, you know, what he had done that was even worse, and said that, you know, God does forgive you. God does see what you're trying to do. And by the way, it's not as bad as what you think, right? But for me, when I remembered it, I thought it was all over, right? But it wasn't all over. I just had to share it with somebody and get another viewpoint. So does anybody have any other questions that I can try to answer? I might know, I might not. All right, man. Get it scheduled. Get it done. We're going to end with the 3rd step prayer today, but the last 5 sessions, we're going to end with the 7th step prayer. God, I offer myself to Thee to build with me and to do with me as Thou wilt. Relieve me of the bondage of self, that I may better do Thy will. Take away my difficulties, that victory over them may bear witness to those I would help of Thy power, Thy love, and Thy way of life. May I do Thy will always. Peace!